Ronnix with it another tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to be editing this very image, and this image is taken by Retouching, and it was part of her retouching challenge, I think a month ago. So as you can see, it was taken by Retouching, and I'm going to put the link to her YouTube channel in the description of this very video. So let me just start retouching this very image. And unlike my usual videos, I deal with other skin complexions, unlike this very type of image. So let's see how we are going to go about retouching this very image. And you can see the before and after so far. I've just tried to remove the blemishes so that I don't take a longer time trying to remove these blemishes from this very image. So I think let me just get rid of the final blemish. Let me just get rid of this whitish thing. So I think that looks better. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to be using frequency separation, and I'm going to be using my actions for frequency separation. And those interested in how to create your own frequency separation actions for skin retouching, I'm going to put the link for you guys right above here so that you can just click and watch and record your own actions. So I always get questions from you guys about giving out free actions. I think it would be better if you learned how to create your own actions for skin retouching. So I think I've done enough for the talking. Let me just merge these layers by hitting Shift Command E to merge these layers, or Shift Control E. And I'm going to come under my actions, and since this is a 16-bit action, I'm going to come and I play my 16-bit action. So after this step, I'm going to start moving. So I'm going to look for the area that has more textures than the rest of the image. So I think this area has more textures. I'm just going to start moving the radius up to that point when the textures are just starting to disappear, and I'm remaining with only the color. So I'm just going to move this even more. So I think at around 10 we have blurred out the textures, and I'm going to simply hit OK, and my action is going to continue playing. And as you can see, it has already created for me this nice black and white layer inside of my frequency separation group. I'm going to close this. I'm going to come and select my mixer brush tool and make sure it is a clean brush. So we have two options right here. I'm going to come and select my second option, which is all about cleaning the brush after each and every stroke. Remember, I want to use the mixer brush tool to blend or even out the skin tones in this image. So I'm going to be using a wetness of around 9%, the load 75, mix 90, and the flow at 100. So since I'm only dealing with the colors or the skin tones in the image, I'm going to make sure the sampling is, or sample all layers is not checked, because if at all I check this, it means the brush is going to be sampling and painting details into other areas. So I only want to blend the colors. That's why I have not checked this box right here. So while I'm selected on my low frequency layer, I'm going to zoom in slightly, and I'm going to increase on the size of the mixer brush tool and try to even out the tones or the skin tones in this particular portrait. So let me just see how I am going to do the retouching on this image. I think it is my first time doing a tutorial about retouching this kind of skin complexion. So let me see how it all goes down. So I think the black and white layer is a little distracting. So let me just work on the image the way it is right now, because I have some kind of red contouring for the makeup right here, and I wasn't able to see it while I was using the black and white adjustment layer. So how I'm doing this, I'm just trying to even out the skin tones in this particular image using the mixer brush tool. So the mixer brush tool is usually under the brushes, so simply right click and you'll get your mixer brush tool embedded right there. So let me just come and even out these skin tones in this image. So let's see our progress so far for the mixer brush tool or for evening out the skin tones in this image. So I'm going to come all the way up and I'm going to see the before and after. You can see it is really doing a really nice and decent job. So let's just going to slightly zoom in order to see every unblended area, and just use the mixer brush tool to even out those tones just like that. So I'm basically on my low frequency layer, or the color that is rather the layer that is containing the colors of this particular image. So I'm going to activate my black and white, and I'm going to continue evening out the skin tones in this particular image just like that. So I hope you're seeing the results so far, and it is really a gradual process. So always make sure that you don't rush through your skin retouching, because at the end of the day we just want the best out of the time we spend trying to do the skin retouching on the images. So I'm going to come right here and I'm going to continue evening out the tones just like that using the mixer brush tool. So I hope you can see the results right now. So let me see the progress before and after. I'm just going to come to this highlight. I'm just going to come to this eye. I don't know what it's called, but let me just even out the tones in those particular areas. So I think that looks really nice and decent enough. So before, after, before, after. So let me just come to the nose area and I do some little bit of a blending of the skin tones. I don't want to get rid of the nice. I feel like she had some kind of freckles, and I just don't want to remove most of them. So I'm just going to remove a few, and I think that looks nice. So when I'm done doing this, I'm going to be using my second method for evening out the tones in this particular image, and that is using the lasso tool method to even out the skin tones in this particular image. So let me show you guys our progress so far, and you can see the before and after for this very image. So let me just continue evening out the tones even more. So let me zoom out to see the progress. I feel like this highlight is a little bit distracting, so I'm just going to even it out even more. So I feel like this is okay. So I'm going to increase on the size by using the brackets. So for those wondering, the tool I'm using for blending the skin tones, I'm using the mixer brush tool while I am on my low frequency layer, and I'm just going to move down to the neck area of the model and start or continue evening out the skin of this very model. So let me just do this, and I'm going to really have the best results out of this very retouched image. So let me get done with this a little bit faster, because I feel like I'm taking quite a long time or a longer time trying to retouch this very image. So let me just do this. Now I think this looks okay, and let me just even out this part of the neck. So I'm basically trying to even out these tones using the mixer brush tool and get rid of those bumpiness in the skin textures of this very model. So let me do this. So let's see the before and after so far. So this is the before and after, before, after, and the skin still looks natural as possible. So as I'm still selected on my low frequency layer, I'm going to basically come to the lasso tool, and I'm going to make a selection to give this image a really cooler look. So I'm just going to come and select part of the skin, and the feathering I'm using is 22 and anti-alias is selected. Come to filter, and I'm going to come to blur and come to Gaussian blur. So for this step, I'm going to start moving this radius up to that point when I feel like I have the best skin texture out of this image. So I'm going to go with around 30, and I'm going to be applying this effect onto the rest of the image. So I'm just going to come and make a shape just like that. So simply right click and come to Gaussian blur, and if at all you feel like the effect is too much, you can fade or reduce on it by using Shift Command F or Shift Control F, and you can reduce on the effect. So just come and do this. So I'm just going to come to this contouring, and I'm just going to right click and come to Gaussian blur to smoothen the skin even more or get a better transition in the skin tone of the model. So right click and come to Gaussian blur. I'm going to come to the model's chin, and I'm going to do some little bit more of the fine-tuning process on this particular area. So I think the lasso tool is really doing a nice job trying to even out those areas we may have accidentally skipped when we are using the mixer brush tool to blend or even out the tones in this image. So let's just come right there and come to Gaussian blur and even out those tones. And as you can see, the way I'm doing this is I'm making these shapes or drawing these shapes the way light is falling on a particular area or how a particular area is shaped. So you can see right now where we are. So let's see the before and after. So alternate, you can see the before, after. So let me just come to the fingers because I feel like I didn't use the mixer brush tool to blend or even out the fingers of the model. So I'm just going to come to the low frequency layer and come back to the mixer brush tool, and I'm going to continue just evening out the tones of the model's face, just like that. And when I'm done doing all that, I'm just going to come back and remove the blemishes that may have remained in this very image on the step when I was doing the blemish removal. So I think that looks okay. So you can see the before and after for the skin retouching, and it is really nice and a decent job so far. So I'm going to come to the high frequency layer or the layer that is containing the textures, and I'm going to come to the clone stamp tool. For the settings of the clone stamp tool, hardness at 0, opacity at 100, and the flow at 100. So aligned is also checked. So sampling should be on the current layer because I don't want to sample or get information from the low frequency layer. I'm just going to zoom in the image and I'm going to start removing those remaining blemishes. So simply hold down the alternate key, click on a clean area. So left click on a clean area to sample and release, and click over the blemish to get rid of it. So that is how I'm trying to clean up the image even more and reduce on the amount of these hairs on the model's face. So I'm just going to do that for the next 1 minute, and you're going to be going straight into the color grading process and eye whitening for this very model. So stick around and we are just going to get in that in a bit. So let me just remove these small tiny skin imperfections because as a retoucher you have to pay attention to every single detail in your images. I think that looks okay, and we are really doing a nice and a really decent job to this particular image. So just come and remove those remaining blemishes, and after you have removed the blemishes you are going to see what we have done for this particular retouching process. You can see the before and after. We still have the original texture that is embedded into this image. I think I have a distracting highlight right here. I'm just going to try to remove it. So come to the clone stamp tool and sample from here, and I'm just going to start painting over that tiny line right there to kind of eliminate it from that particular area. So I think this is really looking nice and decent. So before after, before after. So let's just come straight to the color grading process. because I feel like I have not distorted the model's face or any facial structures, because if we had done so, we'd go straight into the dodging and burning process for this particular image. So let me just try to clean up these other tiny blemishes. So I'm going to come and delete the black and white layer. I'm going to close the frequency separation group, and I'm going to come to my selective color option to do some little bit more of the tweaking to this image. I'm going to come to the blacks, and I'm going to first of all intensify the blacks in the image to around 3. And now I feel like I want to add some kind of warm tones to the image. I'm going to come to the yellows and just drop it down. So just drop down the yellows up to a point when I feel like it is fine and okay. And come to the red channel. And how I'm going to do this, I'm going to add some little bit of yellows to the reds of this image to around 3, and also add a little bit of cyans to the reds to around -2, and come to the yellow channel, and this time around I'm going to reduce on the yellows, the amount of yellow in the yellows, so you can see the before and after. It is really not much. So for the last color grading process, we're just going to go straight to the camera raw filter. So I'm going to come and create a stamp visible layer by hitting Shift Alternate Command E on the keyboard, or Shift Alternate Control E on the keyboard to create this stamp visible layer, and I'm going to duplicate that by hitting Control or Command J. Then come to filter and come to the camera raw filter, because I feel like I can do a little bit more in the color grading process. I'm going to come to the calibration option, and I'm going to play around with these sliders. I feel like desaturating the reds would do a little bit more of the justice, and I'm going to come to the blue primary, so I'm going to see what works best for this image. So around -1 we're okay, and now pump up my saturation to around 9, so you can see the before and after. It is not much of a difference. Then I'm going to come to the luminance option, and I'm going to come to the oranges and slightly mute the oranges in this image to around -6. Then I'm going to come to the hues, and I feel like I should add some little bit of greens to the oranges to around 1. And I'm going to come to straight up to the temperature, because I feel like the image is getting a little bit warmer. I'm just going to put it to around -1 and add a little bit of greens to the image to around -2, and you can see the before and after for the camera raw filter. And I'm going to come to the eye whitening, so I'm just going to zoom all the way in. I'm going to hold down the space bar and zoom into the eyes, and I'm going to do or make these eyes pop a little bit more. I'm going to come to the adjustment brush tool and set it. So remember, we have some yellow tones in the white area, so I'm going to move the temperature option towards the opposite of yellow, which is blue. So I'm just going to move it to around -24, and since we have some greens in the white area, I'm going to come to the opposite of green, which is magenta, and I'm going to take it all the way to around 63. So since I want the eyes to pop, I'm going to add a highlight of around 4 and also add a white of around 5. Then I'm going to reduce on the saturation of this very whitening effect. I'm going to take it all the way down to around -68, and I'm going to paint over the eye to give it that kind of whitening feel. So after I have done that, I'm just going to also enhance the iris of the model just like that, and also come and paint over this area to give it that kind of more decent look. So I'm just going to zoom out and go back into Photoshop to show you guys the effect we have been able to achieve in the camera raw filter. So this is the before after. So I feel like I should reduce on the amount of vibrance to the image. just going to come to the vibrance option and slightly knock down the vibrance a little bit around -4 and add some little bit more of the contrast and activate use legacy, and I'm just going to add that contrast of around 2. It is not much, but it really makes a difference. And I think we are done retouching this very image. So you can see the before, before and after. You can see a difference we have been able to achieve using frequency separation. So what I'm going to do basically, I'm going to export this image in a ratio, in the way that it is not going to be able to change in color after it has been posted or put on a different device. So I'm just going to come to File and come to Export and come to Export As. And when I come to Export As, I'm going to select the information or embed some settings that are going to give me a sharp image and embed those colors we have been able to color grade or embed into the image. So I'm going to come to Format and select JPEG. So resampling, I'm going to select by cubic sharper because I want a sharp output of this very portrait, and I'm going to come and activate embed color profile. So when you embed color profile, you're not going to be having those issues of having your images change when you post them on social media or when you put them on a different website. So after doing all that, I'm going to come to Export and I'm going to name this image whatever it is, Vera Change 10K Retouching Challenge, and I'm going to leave the location as desktop and hit save, and the image is going to be saved in that given location on my computer. So when it is done, it's going to close this window and go back to Photoshop. And this is all for today's tutorial. And if at all you have learned something from this tutorial, don't forget to like this video and don't forget to subscribe. If at all you have been watching from this channel for the very first time, Ronnix from ronnixphotography. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in yet another tutorial on this channel. Don't forget to keep practicing and keep creating.